So I'm here with my special guest, Mr. Marcellus Alexis Morris from Freeport, New York. Um, I have him on today, as you can see behind us. It is a mock cell. We will absolutely get into why we sitting here. And I just want to give a huge shout out to the African American Museum in Hempstead. Make sure you guys check them out, their website. Come and see this beautiful place. Come and utilize this beautiful place. It is right in the heart of Hempstead, New York. And just want to say welcome again to Marcellus.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right. So I asked him earlier. He said he's from Freeport, but he works in Hempstead. So I asked him why. So I would like for you to share that reason.
But why? Because when I first came home, they had a program at 100 Black Men for reentry, and I got involved with that program. And from there, matter of fact, the program really started right here in this African American Museum,
Nice.
and then transferred over to 100 Black Men. So in that process, I just stayed around this area. I moved to this area, and I've been here for quite a while. A lot of people do consider me from Hempstead,
Right.
if they don't know the whole background and story, because they see me around here so long.
Mm-hmm.
But the real story is I came from Chicago,
Mm-hmm.
my last year of high school, because I was getting in trouble in Chicago, and my father moved to Freeport, New York.
Okay. Cool. All right. So we got a little background. So speaking of your father, like if I was to ask you who is Marcellus Morris, what would you say?
Marcellus Morris is an individual that cares and trying to make a difference.
Love it. Love that. Love that. So you shared a little bit about being from Chicago. When we think of Chicago, of course, we think of the Step in the Name of Love. We thinking of R. Kelly. But we also know that they got some real hoods out there. So being from there and then transitioning here, what was that like? And how old were you?
I was 16, going on 17.
Okay.
So the transition wasn't too bad because I was coming from a high school, going to another high school.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew, what to expect. I played football in
Oh, in
Freeport.
sports.
So it started out, football starts out before school starts. So I was able to make some connections there.
Okay. All right, cool. So coming from there to here now, like I said, we absolutely know that Chicago got some real hoods. So how was it navigating? Did you grow up in a two-family home? You were adopted?
I was adopted at birth
Okay.
in Miami, Florida. So I had kind of a fortunate childhood to be adopted. Um, I was left in the hospital for 30 days. Um, Alfred Morris and Louise Morris, they came and picked me out, adopted me, showed me love,
Mm-hmm.
gave me some guidance, and gave me opportunities. So it's not like I grew up in a horrible environment.
Right.
I personally made
Your
the wrong
choices.
choices. Yes.
Right. I can respect that answer. My God, I can respect that for sure. So growing up with two parents who loved you enough to take you from where you were, because you would get in trouble, bring you to New York. What was that like, and what age were you when you first got in trouble being here?
Well, let's rewind a little bit. I was already
Okay.
getting in trouble in Chicago.
Oh, you were?
Right. So they brought me here to try to steer me out of trouble or give
Gotcha.
me a fresh start. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you could take the person out of the situation, but if that person is still the same, it's still the same.
Dropping
Unfortunately,
jewels.
I was into robbery.
Okay.
And then as robbery, 84, 85, drugs were involved,
Right.
cocaine, robbery, and a lack of hope. I had
Mm.
my whole hope in that basketball.
Right.
And when that basketball dream, I think Jay-Z said it, when true fiends fake, something like that, my fault.
He tried, folks.
He used an analogy with basketball.
Right. Basically saying like, if you don't got a ball in your hand, it's the opposite direction would
when
be.
hoop dreams deflate, true fiends wait.
Ooh.
Meaning that when that basketball dream
when you don't
leaves,
make it.
yeah, then you go straight to the streets. And
Bars.
just being by this age and looking back on my life and some of my peers' life, a lot of us that played basketball or was starting football and didn't make it to college kind of went in that wrong direction. So
They're not okay right now.
Yeah, it has to be a pill. Some of them made it through it, but you go through that period. You know what I'm saying? Where you think streets and crime is it.
You think those are the only two options, kind of.
Right.
Like either
exactly.
you know how to play sports, and you better push to make it with that, or you in the streets. Like unfortunately, that's the two options that our children feel that they
Think they
have.
have, yes.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. All right, so now I'm thinking, and for those who don't know, Freeport and Hempstead are the suburbs of New York. But we too have our own hoods. So I'm sure his parents thought coming to Long Island, suburbs, my son gonna be good because he gonna get a good education. We're gonna be in a good environment. It ain't gonna be none of that. And then get here and it's like, okay, it's everywhere. Right?
Right. Well, like I said, once you're in that life, you're gonna go to another high school, but you're
Doing the
gonna
same
pick
thing.
up on who's who and what's what, and
Mm-hmm.
birds of a feather flock together. So
Facts, facts.
you're gonna figure out who's with the robbery, who's with the cocaine, who got the weed,
Mm-hmm.
and all that. That just comes with the territory.
Right.
And being that I was a part of the football team, that gave us access to the parties or whatever else
Oh
it was.
yeah, because when you in sports, you that dude. Like period. You ain't even got to be too nice at ball, but just because you on the team, you getting all this attention, right? I be knowing I was a cheerleader.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so like with that, do you remember the first time you got in trouble, as in like got arrested?
I remember the first time I got in trouble, I got arrested. We were in Chicago, and my partner had just got a job at Popeye's Chicken. So he knew what time the manager left. So we came inside Popeye's. I think we took like 20 cases of chicken.
Not chicken.
So when we giving the chicken out, we get a call from our partner. Oh, you got to bring the chicken back. What? So we done sold the chicken, people frying it and all that. So we gather up as much as we could
Right.
to take back. So we get back, get the chicken back. I think we're missing like 2 or 3 bags or whatever the case it is. So we sitting in the parking lot. We think it's over with. And then the police roll up behind us. And all 3 of us get locked up. So that's my first. So our parents had to come down
Wait, I'm
and
gonna
get
need
us.
you.
And so when we went to
We
school,
gotta unpack this.
when we went to the school, our name for that week or 2 weeks was Chicken Hawk.
In high school fashion, you gonna have a nickname after doing something like that. Because I want to understand. Chicken though?
We were opportunists.
Y'all were not playing.
We were kind of not opportunist hustlers, but we kind of hustle. We snatched the Sunday bus fares. On Sunday in Chicago, you can get a ride for $1 and ride all the way around.
Oh wow.
Yeah. We used to take radiators from one junkyard to another junkyard
To get money for it.
Just to get money for it.
Okay. Well, y'all sure paid attention to stuff.
We used to rob the flea markets, and then when we got caught, they used to chain us to the thing. So you got individual youth that just grow up on that path and take that chance. I mean, I remember growing up. I did some growing up in Philly, and I had a partner named Richard Whiting. So I used to like to throw snowballs at cars, but he would go home. So what was instilled in him, that character at a young age, to know, okay, my son's about to do his madness. Let me go home. What was in him? What character trait did he have?
Or who scared him? How about that part? Because some you'll hear people like, I'm too scared to go to jail. Like, period. They like, if I know you about to go that way, I'm not going. Like, that's just it. They just know it ain't happening. All right. So thank you, for saying that. Sometimes you take a person out of the environment, but what's in you, like, it's what it is. You know what I'm saying? So let me ask you this: being adopted, did you ever feel like you had like abandonment issues, or you always just felt love?
Well, my mother gave me so much love that I didn't never really have the desire. Kind of in the back of my mind, and one of my baby mothers wants to know exactly who I am and what I am, but that's just an ancestry test.
Okay.
Sometimes thinking back, you look, I wonder who my real mother and father is. So the story goes that my father was a boss, my mother was a secretary, but he was married. They had an affair, but she wasn't with abortion.
Got it.
So she left the job, gave me up for abortion, and then came back to it. Yeah, adoption.
Okay. Okay. Have you ever tried to find
I was in Miami one time, and I think I went to try to look up the hospital, but it was gone. So that was the end of that effort.
And your parents don't know nothing else other than that?
No.
Wow. Okay. Okay. All right. We're going to get into the baby mama. Trying to help you out later. So now, all right. So young, getting arrested while you're in Chicago. Now you're in New York. and clearly your parents are trying to figure things out to keep you out of trouble. That's where the sports come in at. Now, do you know how many times you've gotten arrested here? And what was like the longest stretch you've ever done? And how old were you?
I caught the bonus early. At
You caught
seven
the
bonus, the
oh,
bonus. I caught 7 to 21 at
ooh.
17 years old for a jewelry store robbery, and I wound up doing 9 years off of that right there.
So you're in jail at 17 with grown behind men.
Yes.
What was that like?
Well, I grew up on. Well, I started in Nassau County, E2 Main House of Pain. So that
Tell them
tier,
what E2 main House of Pain is.
E2 Main House of Pain is a tier in Nassau County, and that's where the juveniles go.
Okay.
So I started there. Now you hear a lot about Rikers Island during that time with the cutting and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But in E2 Main, you had to fend for yourself from day one.
Mm-hmm.
As you know, they only do one round, and that's if they do that
Mm-hmm.
round. So that's where I was scared, of course, but that's where I got groomed by guys like Words Bond, I God, Be Original, individuals like that.
Okay. Let me just give them some clarity. So he's saying that his first time doing time, he did a stretch, like 9 years, you said?
Yes.
Okay, at 17 years old. And he's basically saying when he says around, that's the officers are supposed to be doing patrols in those particular dorms. And basically he's saying sometimes it happened, sometimes it didn't. So whatever went on in between the time they did not, he had to fend for himself, basically.
Yes.
Okay. So can you think of a time during that stretch where you were like, I don't want to be here. I don't want to do this anymore. Like, what was that like?
You go through periods of frustration. They say and hurt. They say men cry in the dark. In prison, men cry at night. With their head in the pillow, because you can't hear. You don't want
Can't
people
show.
that show emotion, show softness,
Mm-hmm.
or whatever the case it is. It's only till recently where I'm comfortable crying if that's the emotion that I have at that time. And even my son, I don't want him to cry, be a crybaby, but I don't be on him not to cry.
Right.
If you feel like crying, cry, let it out. But it's the time where it has to stop, and then you go on to the next step.
Right. Love that. I can appreciate that you said that. How many kids do you have?
5.
You have 5 children. All boys?
No. 3 boys, 2 girls.
3 boys, 2 girls. Okay. So them understanding your background and seeing what you're doing now, we're gonna get into that. How do they see you as dad? How do they see you? How do you feel they see you?
I got different ages. I got a 26-year-old, that's my oldest daughter, and then a 21-year-old. So those are my 2 daughters. So they recently, me and my daughter, are working on something where we're doing some writing together. So she just said to me, matter of fact, today, that she was speaking to her grandmother. She said, as growing up, when I was locked up incarcerated, um, a little piece of her wanted to see what jail was like. So that kind of hit me hard. You know what
She
I'm
said
saying?
this recently?
Yeah, she just said this
Wow.
recently. She's been to prison, so that's
Right.
why we're working on the story. So that kind of touched me.
That's
You know what I'm
something.
saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. If you have a parent that's incarcerated, a part of a child wants to go there and see what prison is like.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm not mistaken, they say if you have one parent that's been incarcerated, the child has a 50% chance
Oh,
of
yeah.
going.
Repeating.
Yeah,
Yeah.
repeating that offense.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. When we used to go to different schools, we would take our mock cell as well, and a lot of times we would ask the kids, give the time to ask questions. And I would flat out ask them, like, does anyone, you don't have to share, but does anyone have a parent or know of a family member who's been incarcerated? And then they'll say yes. And I'm like, do you mind sharing how you felt about it? And they'll be like, we were hurt. And I would share with them, I'm like, when they're inside, officers like me care enough to let them know, like, listen, when you're in here, your kids are hurting.
Mm.
You think they're fine. They want you. You can be the most horrible parent to everyone else, but that kid love you unconditionally. They just want to be with you. They just want to be in your presence, or they just want to be at their game or at their dance recital and see their parent out there. Do you understand what I'm saying? They got to end up explaining that, oh no, my dad's not here because of this, or they got to make up a lie because they feel some type of way. So, thank you so much for sharing that, and shout out to your daughter. Like, I hope that Works out. That sounds kind of dope.
Yes.
Do you sometimes blame yourself
Oh, for
for
sure.
her
Everybody,
taking that?
each kid. I have another son, Marcellus Morris Jr.
Hmm.
So I blame myself for not being there, during those critical times.
Right.
But when I did come home, um, not being able to forgive my baby mother, and I know you're gonna get on me about that, for moving on and choosing somebody else,
Hmm.
and me not wanting to rekindle just based on her leaving me while I was upstate,
Gotcha.
where I should have been able to realize that I left her. It went upstate.
Right.
It wasn't, you know what I'm saying,
Truth.
that she left me.
Right.
She did what she had to do.
Hmm. I want to just tap into that because, like I said, I'm not one so that I get in behind because I'm like mom as well. So I would sometimes hear some of the guys yelling at the baby mothers or yelling at their mother, and I'm like, are you for real right now? How can, and you've been there before, what is the energy when you're incarcerated that you still feel kind of privileged or you still feel like people owe you something? Can you just kind of tap into that?
Well, you know, you can be spoiled in prison too. It's not,
Mm.
some people have it and some people don't. So the people that have it constantly, sometimes they're spoiled. So when
Mm.
it doesn't come through the package or the mail, they're on their phone cursing them out. Again, it goes back to the thing. In most cases, you put yourself in those situations.
Hmm.
You made those choices, and sometimes we can't own up to that. And then sometimes we think we privileged.
Yeah, I see it a lot. I see it a lot, and it always kind of confused me. I'm like, this person, you clearly need this person out there because you can't get none of the stuff that you're asking for. They actually have to get it. So how do you be disrespectful to them? So it has to be something mentally where, like you said, it could be environmental, where they just always got in their way. So that's not going to stop because they're incarcerated. They just like, let's continue that same vein of you getting me the stuff that I want because I was taking care of you. Because a lot of times I think that's a thing too, where they look at it like, even though I was doing wrong, I was doing for you, so you owe me. Now that I'm gone, that what you can say?
Yeah,
Is it going
that
a lot
rings a
too?
bell. Yes.
Yeah. Marcelo said that rings a bell. Yes. Okay. All right. So now, fast forwarding, you've done time. How many times were you incarcerated? After the 9 years, what was the next bid?
The 9 years.
And what was it for?
The next bid, 9 years. I came home running. Came home thinking I missed something. The clubs, the partying, the fast money, or whatever the case it is. So I wound up going to Texas. Getting caught with some pounds of weed in the door, and getting shot by the police down there in Tig, Texas. So that changed me because Texas is a whole different
Texas
ball
is
game,
different.
yeah,
Yeah.
than New York prison.
Hmm.
Texas is really slavery. That's
Yeah.
the first time I really felt like a actual slave.
It's a lot of racism
You
in the
can't call the
prison.
COs COs. You got to call them boss. You got to be in the field at 6 o'clock in the morning. Then you go back out at 12
In the heat.
in the heat.
Texas is hot.
Yes, yeah. No clothes. I mean, no. You're upstate. No personal clothes.
Wow.
No contact visits.
This is Texas.
Texas, yes.
Ooh. Okay. So was that it for you? Were you like,
No, that
I
wasn't it.
can't?
That wasn't it. It still wasn't it. See, I took the.
Oh.
I didn't have a criminal mentality, but I still had.
Was it like
Good.
arrogance?
No, no. I still had penitentiary ways.
Explain that.
Example. An individual I was working with a moving company. An individual played with my money. I said, "You better find out who I am." The individual called my parole officer, and I caught a violation for
For
threats.
threats.
Yes.
Mm.
So he had to press charges. So he pressed charges, but he never came to court. But
Mhm.
just by him pressing those charges and taking it to the parole officer, or making the parole officer aware, I caught a violation. So in that
Tell them
process,
exactly because they're not gonna know.
a violation is
Yeah.
where you can get sent back for. It used to be, now they got less is more. It used to be for curfew, not going to program, missing appointments and stuff like that. Back then, when I went in, had police contact with the threat,
Hmm.
and I also had an Army Swiss knife in my pocket that my daughter gave me for my birthday. So they wound up throwing the harassment out because he wasn't coming to court. So I caught the violation for an Army Swiss knife. I
Wow.
couldn't control my anger and temper, so on the way back up on the elevator, I wound up catching an assault on the CO on the elevator, which everybody knows that's kind of hard to do.
Yeah. Okay. So did the 9 years, end up getting probation from the 9 years, end up
Parole,
violating, excuse me, parole, um, end up
Texas.
violating parole, huh?
Well, after the 9 years, Texas. Then
After the nine
after
years, Texas,
Texas, then after Texas,
you get shot and arrested,
no, yes, in Texas,
do
and
the
then
time.
do the time, come home, and then I catch the violation.
Okay.
It
Came home
turned
to court the
into,
violation.
yeah, came home from Texas, caught the violation. It turned into assault on the CO.
So you end up being charged again
Yes,
on top of the violation.
yes.
So how much time did you do with that?
6. I blew trial. I took it all the way to trial. I blew
You did
trial.
take it to trial.
And did
Talk to them about that a little bit. You know, I hear all the time where people encourage, let me not say people, the incarcerated individuals will encourage each other not to go to trial. Why do they do that?
not to go to trial. Well, not to
Yeah.
go to trial because if you blow trial, you're gonna get the max.
And blow trial means if you
You
lose.
If you lose trial, you'll get the max. So that could be, depending on your record, that could be 20 or 25. So
Right.
if they might offer you 6 or 5 or 7, that's better than the 20. But you got to understand when you're in there, you just want to get out.
Mm-hmm.
So it ain't, the 5 days or 5 years. Your thing is
I
especially
want to
if
go
you're
home.
innocent, I
Yeah,
want
I
to
want
get
to go
out. Let
home.
me roll these dice.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you win, but a lot of times you lose.
So did you have a paid lawyer? Because that a lot of times it makes a difference too, correct?
No, I didn't have a paid. At that time, that was my third bid. I didn't have a paid lawyer, so that did make a difference.
Yeah.
In the quality, the work ethic they put into your case, and stuff like that.
So yeah, so I brought that up because of exactly what he said. A lot of times, you get a appointed, right, an appointed attorney. So there's no funding behind what they're doing. They're doing kind of like the bare minimum, so to speak.
Yes.
Right. So you got a real case going on. You facing real time, and you entrusting this person who doesn't have much effort, or they're probably just learning. They could be just out of school, correct?
Yes.
And now they're over your case, and you're entrusting them for you to either win this trial or not win this trial, and it's in the hands of someone who's not putting in effort because they're not really being paid for it. So that makes a difference as well when you're fighting a case like that.
Yes.
So now from 17, you do 9, come home, well, go to Texas, this happens, you violate, you come home, you violate, and now you do 6.
Yes.
So in my head, you're definitely institutionalized because you haven't really had time to grow up. You went in as a kid, right?
Yes.
So when you come out, how mature are you?
Mm.
You know what I mean? Like how mature can you really be? Unless, and please touch on this. I know a lot of times when I've spoken to men who are doing well for themselves, who have done time, you'll see the difference in their environment. They had people when they were incarcerated, they were going to school. They had counselors. They had family, who made sure they had certain things. They had stuff lined up before they came home, so they knew where they were coming home to. Kind of explain what the difference is in reference to that. You having a support system and you not having a support system.
Well, it's almost like the first bid. Everybody has that support system. The first time you come home, the second time you come home, it's half, maybe 45%.
What's that
And
mean? Who usually falls off?
The
baby mamas?
half of the people that were looking out for you on that first bid.
Okay.
Now the the third bid, you almost basically by yourself because people are looking at you like you like this. This is something you've been doing it all this time and you haven't really changed up. So, and then some people's families are just better situation, but it all comes down to the individual. So by the time you do that third bid, you come home, you really got to struggle to get back and acclimated into society, get the basic needs, and then where are you going to stay? Where can you stay? You got to start in the shelter system, which is sometimes just like jail, if you really look at it.
Explain.
The shelter system, sometimes they put a bunch of men together. You have to fend for yourself. You got to take your property with you, hide your stuff, different things like that. Just the attitude and the stigma that goes along
Mhm.
with it.
And with the shelter, a lot of times, right, is a time frame, right, where
Yes,
you can't go in at a certain time. You got
yes,
to come
you
back at a
have
certain
a
time. So what was that like?
curfew, food issues, and stuff like that. I think I've been fortunate enough to have um, different living situations when I came out, and never really had to stay in the shelter a long, long time.
Gotcha.
If it was just to get out and figure it out
And
from
you
there.
also have to like find employment and stuff. Like there's actual rules. So you kind of are outside, but still kind of inside, right?
Right. And just for me, um, I had to learn to take whatever job I could get in
Mhm.
order to to get to that next step.
Okay. So now, being from Freeport, how did you get to Hempstead?
Well, parole is in Hempstead, and as I
Oh,
stated
okay.
before, they started a reentry program at 100 Black Men building.
Hmm.
So
So
that's kind of how I got to Hempstead. Ironically, I was at DSS, and me and
tell
Word
me
is
what
Bond,
DSS is.
DSS Department of Social Service, and me and I met Word is Bond. Word is Bond told me to come to the museum because they're doing they're having some sort of reentry thing there with a guy named Roro. So I came down here, and that's how I kind of got stuck in Hempstead. And from that day forth, went to the 100 Black Men, started working there. Worked for LTI, Strong, FCA.
LTI. Shout out to LTI. I used to work there. I ain't gonna tell my age, but a long, long time ago. That's
Mel
dope.
Jackson, shout
Shout out to
out.
Strong too, Serge. Um, you just said something that stuck out. You said Borders Bond told you about the reentry program. So
Yes,
someone you was incarcerated with
yes,
is part of your journey to
yes.
do the work you're doing now. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. So now, Borders Bond was older than you,
Word is Bond was the same age.
same
Yeah,
age,
we grew up on E2 Main. That's where I met
right?
Word is Bond at.
So now, looking back, when you were in E2 Main with him, did you ever think that he would be the person that would help you
No,
to do something positive?
no. He
Wow.
was still positive, you know what I'm
Okay.
saying? And then he had talent because he could draw real good or whatever the
Hmm.
case it is. But I never think 20 years later I would see him and he would direct me to the museum.
Love that. Love
Yeah.
that. All right. So now, tell us about all the programs that you involved yourself in since hitting, encountering what is it, 1,000 black men?
100 Black Men,
I'm
yeah.
sorry, 100. We're gonna make it 1,000, y'all. But 100 black men.
Oh,
That
as
program
a
still exists, right?
no, they
It
shut it down.
doesn't.
No, they shut it down. The new administration came in and shut it down.
Why would they shut that program down?
Oh, I have no idea. Well, remember, she wasn't really with the second chance as Kathleen Rice was. You know what I'm saying? She
Okay.
stood on being hard on crime or whatever the case it is.
I'm sorry. I'm want to be clear on what we're talking about. He's talking about the district attorney, correct?
Yes.
Okay. With the programs, all the stuff has to be approved, and people have to care about it enough to keep it going. So, you know, like he said, different administrations are for different avenues. So, okay. So, 100 black men is gone. So now,
Well, I went from as I told you, I started at LTI.
mhm,
LTI went to Strong
explain what LTI is. I'm sorry.
Leadership Training Institute.
Hmm.
From there, I went to Strong, struggling to reunite our next generation.
Hmm.
Um, After that, I went to FCA, Family Children's Association. Um, and then I started my own organization called Reign for Life. And, just taking classes in restorative justice, healing
Hmm.
circle classes, credible messengers training, and just being around and networking with different people.
Networking.
Yeah.
That's the word right there. Networking for sure. Have you ever had therapy?
Briefly, briefly had therapy, but I know it's well needed.
Hmm.
I used the healing circles, and that was the important thing about 100 Black Men. They had a circle every week where formerly incarcerated people could sit and come and express their struggles, their
Like,
fears, their
like in
hopes,
a
and
smaller group setting.
and give each other some sort of hope. But they
Right.
also had those resources
Hmm.
to come with it. And what I mean by that is I was coming home and I was interested in being a mechanic. They would hook me up so I
Nice.
get a part-time mechanic job
Okay.
that didn't interfere with if I was on DSS or my, food stamps or anything of that nature.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing that because I'm remembering now being, I work in Nassau County, but I had an opportunity to visit the Suffolk County Jail. And that's one of the things that stood out to me, that actually on the premises were different places where as soon as you come out of jail, you can sign up for DSS, you can sign up for whatever. They had the resources soon as you leave that facility. It's actually on the compound. So I thought that that was significant because sometimes, like you were a kid being locked up, you kind of on your own once you're released. But if you see before you even get out, have a counselor telling you, okay, when you leave here, if you're homeless, we have this here. If you need money or whatever, we have this here. Or if you're looking for a job, there's this program as well. So I think, thank you for sharing. I think that's so, so important. And when it comes to the rehabilitation, because even though, as they would call them frequent flyers, people who will constantly go in and out, I'm like, there must be a glitch there that they're not getting what they need. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, yes.
So when it comes to you learning these skills, because I'm thinking you also have to learn kind of like people skills in reference to how to speak.
Right. I took college while I was locked up, and I was able to get
Okay,
my
good.
BA degree. So inside of college, you have to hone your speaking skills because they
Mm-hmm.
kind of make you stand up there and give speeches,
Right.
write reports,
Okay.
and stuff like that. And then, as I said, sitting down there at 100 black men, um, through those circles, and then becoming a counselor and stuff like that, you have to develop that craft
Right.
and keep it going because you don't want to be redundant and boring week after week. So you have to, develop your skills.
That's awesome. That is, I need to get in that class, huh? No, listen, speaking in front of people is
Number one fear.
serious.
Number one
Yeah.
fear in America.
I was crippled for years, so shout out to you for that. So now, if I ask someone, oh, okay, if someone in my family went to jail, why would I tell them to come to you?
When you tell them to come to me to give them the resources they need and also that motivation to stay on that right path,
Okay.
and anything is possible.
I think that's
You
right.
want you
Yeah.
want you want them to develop some sort of plan, not my plan, but what is your plan, and
Mm-hmm.
do you have a plan?
Mm-hmm.
And then how to stick on that plan and give them that support through the rocky times.
Right. So now, being that right now you are the person you needed, when you were going through your troubles and stuff, have you ever had a situation where someone you were pouring into and you were counseling or whatever, you would call it, where they end up getting killed or they end up taking their own life?
Mm. It's funny you say that. We quite a few. A lot of these RIP things are around here. I go all the way back to RIP Smoke,
Wow.
which was maybe 11 years ago. Um, Hakeem Coney, the year I came home, 2007 was the year he passed away. So I
Right.
never really got to chop it up with him. I just got to hear
Mm-hmm.
about the work
And he was a
work he
part of
did.
Heaven.
He was a part of Heaven
Shout out to
organization.
Bishop
Yes.
Mackey for his program.
Shawnee B,
Mm-hmm.
R.I.P. Shawnee B, Scooter.
Mm-hmm.
These are just the name of a few of the ones through my tenure in Hempstead.
Right. Wow, that's a lot of names right there, and there's definitely more. So when you going through that, where your hands on with a person who you see their potential, and you know that they have gifts for the world, what does that do to you in reference to the work? Does that give you that unction to continue on, or do you sometimes feel like, why am I doing this anymore?
Now, I mean, I've been in it maybe 12 years, 13 years, 14 years now. So, you get those phone calls, whatever, or you see somebody coming home, or somebody get locked up. My son recently had got locked up in Nassau County, and the fortunate thing was that he was able to land on a tier with individuals that I helped counsel. So for those
Wow.
3 days, he was able to get that message, and
Right,
that
right.
kind of changed our relationship when he came home because he had a better understanding
Of what you
of the
do.
work I do.
I
Yeah.
love that.
Shout out
Listen,
to
God be knowing.
Ray Sean and Xavier for trying to help them out while they was in there.
Love that. Love that. You got to pay it forward. You got to pay it forward. So now you mentioned a nice amount of programs that you learn from through your journey, and now you started your own. What is that like being like that guy now? Like like this is my thing. I'm gonna do it my way. And what's like the difference between the
But
other organizations?
the difference is that when you have your own organization, you're free, a little bit freer. You know what I'm saying? You have more freedom. You can speak what you need to say.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes when I was working for them organizations, I would say stuff and they call me to the carpet like, you can't say this because it's
Gotcha.
not politically correct,
Oh, right,
or
right, right.
whatever the
Understood.
case it is.
Okay,
Um,
that makes sense.
yeah.
All right, awesome. So now we have this cell behind us, right? Which I know people probably like, what is that about? Explain why are we here and what is letters from a cell about?
Well, the cell right here, it represents the cell. So letters from a cell is a different people coming from different perspectives about prison. I have a letter to my son. I read a letter to my son. Shanika Rogers leaves a letter to her husband. Shaktik Walls reads the letter to his brother.
Mm-hmm.
And Horace Graydon, the co-creator and creator of Letters from the Cell, reads a letter from his sister.
Mm-hmm.
So that impact shows the family, the whole family, and how prison affects everybody, not just the person that's doing the time, but also the family members.
Absolutely.
So it's dynamic in that aspect. And everybody that has seen it, and they went on YouTube and seen it,
Yeah,
has felt the energy and the power that comes from it.
absolutely. Super dope. Make sure you guys check out that on YouTube. He'll give all the information in the end of this interview. But this cell shows you the uncomfortability. It shows you the invasive energy, and this is just the actual cell. This has nothing to do with the smell, right? Like you ain't getting none of the real effects, but you know, it's showing that this is not the place. First of all, we don't belong in cages. Let's just start with that. Okay, and it's Black History Month. All right, we don't belong in cages, but there's so much power also depending on the individual. Some people literally get saved in jail because sometimes when you're out in the world, you can't hear. You don't even want to hear. Let's just say that you don't want to hear. You want to do what you want to do, and sometimes what happens is you got to be sat down. And sometimes jail is the only place because now it's just you and the walls, or you and God if you believe in God. So, what do you want people to get out of tuning in to Letters from a Cell?
I, my angle is mostly the youth, but the parents can get something from it.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully, the youth can see the passion inside the individuals that's reading the letters or giving their talks.
Mm-hmm.
Anything to push somebody towards the right direction and change.
So now, being that you were incarcerated as a youth, is that one of the reasons why you geared in that direction of catching it early type energy?
Well, catching it early is definitely not GADC. Catching it early is third and fifth grade. What I'm learning from experience, because a lot of times when they get to high school, they kind of already set, so it becomes a cat and mouse game. But those individuals, as I stated, they will remember you later on when they're sitting in the county, or whatever the case it is, and they'll write you a letter, and they'll say, "I wish I would have listened," or something like that. You know what I'm saying? So you get your jewels and your energy from those type of situations.
You mentioned earlier, and I got like a few questions left, and then we're good. That I can appreciate. You mentioned earlier about having your son and you now basically being okay with shedding a tear. Our men, Black men, we're kind of taught, well, probably other cultures as well, but a lot of times our men are taught, to be tough and to not show emotions. And me being a boy mom and watching what my brothers are going through, and even my husband now, and the men in my family, I wanted to be the mom that helped my kids to understand, you can share your emotions, but like you said, there's a a
Cutoff
place
line.
where you don't get to a place where you're just totally depressed. But you should be able to vent. You should be able to share, how you're feeling, just so people can understand, to respect you and things of that nature. What can we do for our men when it comes to the emotion part? And you can even share, because I know you have baby mothers, you said, some of the things that we may do wrong and we don't know we're doing wrong. So I would love to hear, your take on that.
Um, as far as the showing the emotion part, as I stated earlier, um, it's just let it release it and let them out. I think where mothers, some baby mothers and mothers go wrong is by catering to their kids, to the baby in them all the way to they're 7, 8, 9 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And what are you preparing them for?
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? Sometimes you have to be um, strict, strict on them,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes you have to show that love. But if you're always just giving, 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 accepting, stop crying,
Mm-hmm.
cuddling, and all that, it leads to um, problems later on.
Right.
Problems in school, problems in relationships, problems in listening.
Mm-hmm. So do you think sometimes the mother operating that behavior comes from the dads not being there?
The
They're just
dads
doing
not
it.
being there,
They're
or based
how they
on
know how to do it.
how they know how to do it, and
Mm-hmm.
based on sometimes what they didn't have growing up, they're trying to
That was
instill
good.
in the kid now,
Okay.
overly. You
Mm-hmm.
know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Just a quick fact: my son got some Yeezys. You only 8 years old. You don't need no Yeezys. He likes them.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But
Yeah.
at 8, I don't
They
think you
not
need
cheap.
Yeezy. Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
I got you. I got you. All right. So one of the things that I'm really like, I have such a heart for the men. Like real talk. We love y'all. Um, One of the things that I've come to realize is that our men, and this has happened suddenly. I feel like it's happened suddenly. Are committing suicide, like in
Mm.
droves. Not just committing suicide, but killing their wives or their baby mamas or their kids before they take their own lives. What is happening?
Um, that's the deep one right there.
Mm-hmm.
It is society, pressure, um, not being able to take that pressure. You saw the poem I had, Made It Through the Storm.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's some of that. Some people feel they can't make it through the storm.
Right.
What takes a person to that point where he could take his life?
Yeah.
That's the thing. What happened? What trauma that he didn't deal with, and what trauma is he facing
Mm-hmm.
for that person, individual, to take his life? And then sometimes you could have a person and think that person is fine and
Right.
well,
Right.
and then you wake up in the morning and read that they killed
Yeah.
themselves in the newspaper,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and you just didn't know that they were going through anything
Mm-hmm.
of that nature. So I think it's a combination of stuff.
Right.
The violence is at an all-time high now. Anyway,
Yeah.
every time you can't help but turn on the TV and see a mass shooting, a
Mm-hmm.
couple stabbings, and
Mm-hmm.
whatever else is just going on.
Yeah. What is your take on the atmosphere right now when it comes to racism? Now we have the Karens and we have the Kens. What is your take on it and have you experienced it?
You experience racism as being a black man on a daily basis. I think even when you go to the city, it's still hard to get a cab. Me and my
Yeah.
son, we experienced that. When you get on the elevator and they clutch their
Right.
pocketbook,
Right. Right.
um, it's at an all time high too.
Right. For sure.
Look look at the case Tyree just
Yeah.
right now, and then that's black on black with
Mm-hmm.
one white officer hidden on the side somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that racial tension is going to be there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So being a father, do you feel that when it comes to racism, because it's alive and well, like it just is what it is. This it's the fabric of this nation, racism. Do you have real conversations with your children about it?
Well, fortunately, my son has been around me long enough, and I've been in his life long enough to whereas we've been to Washington D.C.,
Okay.
been to the museum,
Mm-hmm.
and he'll watch the news a little bit. He's on the phone all the time, but he'll watch the news a little bit and see what's going on. If it's something that I think is prevalent, then I'll make them sit and watch 5 or 10 minutes of it. Then we'll talk about it and discuss it,
Okay.
whatever. So I just try to instill little stuff in him, and then sometimes he will come sit in this museum and listen for a little while.
Okay.
Yeah. So he knows about Black Lives Matter because he was 5 and 6 years old while that was going on.
Okay. All right. So, what what is how can I ask? Okay. What is something that you want to be remembered for? If you decide that, okay, I'm only going to be doing this for such time, and I want to kind of relax, I want to kind of just be a parent, or I just want to kind of travel and just do me, I feel like I've done enough. What would you want to be said about you for your works?
He tried and he cared.
Okay. Okay. Are you married?
No.
Are you trying to get married?
Yes.
You are. Okay. Cool. So one of the kids' mothers?
Yes.
Okay. Let's go. All right. So even with that, I'm glad I asked that question. Even with that, I've had conversations with people and they make it as though our men don't get married. How do you think you would be an effective husband?
Well, as you stated, I did 9, then stayed on 2 years, did 2, stayed on 2 years, and then did 6 and stayed on 2 years. So my maturity level wasn't all the way there.
Right.
I just think it's important that we try to have as many mothers and fathers in the household that you can. Even if you're not on great terms, just your presence there or whatever. There's been plenty of nights that I will sleep on the couch. We not whatever had an argument, we're not getting along, but just that presence and you working together helps.
Okay.
Single mothers have it rough.
Yeah.
Have it rough, but that's without a doubt. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Especially with males as they get a certain age, they just tend not to listen. Kind of like
Right.
boys in the hood, where at a certain age he had to pass the son off to the father,
Right.
and I think that was a subliminal message.
It wasn't subliminal. They was making it
Yeah,
clear. Like sometimes y'all gotta get your sons. You know, he's not listening. Like I love him, but I don't want to bury him, right? Sometimes you gotta keep it all the way 100 and be like, you gotta do it. Like I'm doing what I know how to do, but I'm mom still. And sometimes mothers, you can't even take it personal. You just have to be grateful that you have the option. Do you understand what I'm saying?
yeah.
Because if your kid is not in sports, sometimes they don't have the option to have that coach or that mentor. How important is having a mentor?
Very important. Shout out to the Raiders coaching staff, Newt and them.
Shout out to Newt.
They
He
they
hit the
it's
hot mic.
they hit they they helped with my son, and I'm not ashamed to say that I needed
Love
that help.
that. Love that.
Um, you know what I'm saying? Because they have a rapport with my son. That football is, I really don't care about the football. I care about the character.
Yeah.
And Newt is kind of on that same path, so he wants to develop them all the way, not just football, but their characters. So
As
he
young
needs,
men.
as young men, and that football is right there.
Right.
It's at Kennedy Park. He's involved with the neighborhood. But
Absolutely.
mostly, if a parent calls him, and now they do it him, and a couple other coaches, I gave them the teachers their number. So when he acts up, they call me, but they can also reach
I
out to
love
them
that.
so that they're developing that family bond to move him forward. They say it takes a village, so
It
you
absolutely
got to
does.
reach out to coaches that have that rapport. I too much don't remember too much my father said to me, but I remember a lot of stuff the coaches instilled in me.
See that? Come on. You know, listen, definitely absolutely takes a village. So what is next, for the organization? What do you have in mind that's going to make the community better? What can we do more in reference to making the community more cohesive and more positive?
Working together. That's the
Okay.
biggest thing. Working together, not fighting over this little bit of funding, not trying to chop you others off at the news, and really come together.
Right.
Put aside our differences. This is some great people in Hempstead, some dynamic students in Hempstead.
Absolutely.
Um, we do a thing called Good Deeds Awards, where you find those students that are not as good at sports, not getting straight A's, but they have that good character.
Love that.
In
Love
them.
that.
You know, some of those kids, they cry because this is the first time they're
They're being
getting an award, being
recognized.
recognized
Yeah.
for doing something good.
I love that.
The bad kid gets recognized all the time, every day. They shout his name out 20 times a day. But the kid that just has a good manners, does what he's supposed to do, doesn't get too much
It's either the
recognition.
bad kid or the kid who's excels.
Yes.
Those are the ones that are seen. So I think that's amazing. That is absolutely amazing. So you mentioned funding. You know, how can we assist?
Well, just assist by when we put these proposals together, either collaboratively or singly, um, approve them, help out, whatever you can do, donate, whatever the situation is. But mostly get involved. I think
Get
you
involved.
you spoke about mentoring and the importance of mentoring. That's very important.
Okay. All right. Cool. All right. So if you had to leave us with something, well, you basically kind of answered that. You said you want to be left. You want to be known as a person who cared and who tried, right?
Yes.
Do you read?
Yes.
Give us a book. Give us something that you could be like, this book changed my life, or this book got me on a certain path, or this book affected me in such and such way.
As a man thinketh.
I got that book. That is a good one, y'all. Yeah, that is a good one. So tell the people where to find you. Tell them about the information for your organization.
You can find
Let's
me.
hear it.
You can find me anywhere around Hempstead. My name is Marcellus Morris, 516-503-1837. On Facebook, Marcellus Morris. Just hit me up, reach out, and we'll go from there.
All right. Marcellus Alexis Morris of
Senior.
Freeport, New York. What you say?
Senior.
It's senior. Okay, let's be clear. Senior of Freeport, New York, operating out of Hempstead. Make sure you guys follow him, connect with him on social media. You're on Facebook, correct?
Yes.
Under Marcellus Morris.
Yes.
Are you on Instagram?
No.
Not on Instagram. Is it organization?
No, it should be.
All right, yeah, we're gonna do that when we leave from here. We're gonna hook them up. But yeah, please, sir, please, ma'am, if you have any questions connect to his program, if you have any questions connected to this cell, and give us a YouTube channel, please. For
Letters from a Cell on YouTube. Punch in Horace Grading or Marcellus Morris.
Okay. Shout out to Tyson too. Tyson from Urban Magazine and Paperwork Goods clothing line, and he has a podcast now as well. So shout out to Tyson. Make sure y'all support him on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to Hot Mic with Lady She podcast on YouTube, soon to be on Apple and the other podcast platforms. But make sure you follow me on Facebook, Hot Mic with Lady She. Make sure you follow me on Instagram as well, Hot Mic Lady She _ podcast. You can also follow my t-shirt company as well, which is She's Got Tees, one word. I'm having a sale going on right now for Black History Month. Make sure you get your one and your other for half off. Listen, everybody, any last words?
Just unity, man. Let's get together.
Unity. Love it.
To stop the violence.
Bars. That's how you end. And everyone have a blessed day. Later.